this as well. It's probably not going anywhere, but just so people know that it's recording. All right, Satya, let me find you.
I offered to co-host so I can help with muting and let people in. It's always helpful for me when I'm hosting.
Hi, how are you? Oh. Sorry, guys. All right. Satya's a co-host. Okay.
Yay.
Mark, let's begin. And I promise I'll get the PDF. When T starts talking, I'll get you guys the PDF. Mark, I know you found tarot as a young person, a young gay man. Can you give us sort of your how you arrived at both Kabbalah and tarot and why they're actually, you didn't invent this connection?
Certainly not. I came to tarot when I was 16. And, the very first books I read on the subject, said there was this connection with Kabbalah, but the way they wrote about Kabbalah was, I thought, unnecessarily obscure. They talked about it with a kind of, oh, this is so holy and so hard to understand. I just decided I don't need this, right? It's not essential if you want to study tarot. It's for a certain kind of thing. So I decided I would just ignore it. And I did. And, and we're going along now until I get into my late 40s. And I've been reading tarot all that time and studying with various teachers and learning different systems. And then I returned to Judaism in my late 40s. And started studying Kabbalah from within the tradition. And I studied with teachers who were not about making it obscure, but about really opening it up and making it something practical that you could really experience in your body, and that you could use in your life, while at the same time not making it sort of, you remember that Janis Joplin song, "Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Benz?" Right? This is not about, manifesting stuff, right? It's not about, wearing a red thread and chanting and getting things. It's very much, about deep inner exploration. And so I started doing it. And the more I did it within Judaism, one day, we were doing this practice called counting the Omer. And I realized, wait a second, I bet I can do this with the cards. I can see what the connection is. So I started doing it for the first time, doing this particular ritual, very traditional Kabbalistic ritual of deep inner reflection, a 49-day sort of journey through the cards. And at the end of the 49 days, it just took me to a place deeper than I'd ever been, either with the cards or the Kabbalistic ritual alone. And I kept doing it for the next few years until I decided I need to write a book about this because I want to share it with people. And so that's what my book was about. And it's how I came to Kabbalah and tarot together. And the thing I want to say about this is that, you'll see this in the list of books I give you in the PDF. But the Kabbalah that I teach with tarot is different than most Kabbalah that you will see with tarot, because the tradition in the tarot world is what they call Hermetic Kabbalah. I don't want to bore you with all of the details of this stuff, except that, the history of how this happened is something that I'm passionately interested in. These, tarot cards were invented in 15th century Italy. And this was also a sort of a hotbed of Kabbalistic study. And the two things came together because of a group of people who were studying Kabbalah and it was dangerous for them to do so. So they decided to use the cards as flashcards to learn the concepts, not for fortune telling, but as a way of, as kind of creating what they call a memory palace. Things, prompts, visual prompts to help people understand the Kabbalistic concepts. And over the centuries, those things kind of got stuck together. And people didn't understand how or why some of the meanings for the cards came to pass. But that's where a lot of the meanings started. And I've been sort of studying that period intensely because I just love history.
We were talking too before we started, in part because I had done when Sachi and I did the I Ching, we were talking, and she's a therapist, not to put her on the spot, but we were talking too about how helpful. And I have one of my dear friends is an astrologer and a psychologist too, and that she can triangulate through some of these. Bringing a third into the relationship can be really helpful too for helping people go a bit deeper. If you pull a card or you build a hexagram, and then you're sort of either as a prompt for getting you to move into conversation, just putting that out there, because I feel like it can be, I don't know how many of us go to therapists who are open to us like being like, I pulled this card and I want to talk about it, but or I built this hexagram, but I think these things become really beautiful ways to be in conversation with the universe when we're trying to both figure out who we are and how we're supposed to go forward. Yeah.
Most definitely. Many of the people who come to me, if you ask a tarot reader, what's the most common question that they get? What they will answer is he coming back? And we all laugh about that. But that is not the most common question I get. What the clients who seek me out know that I'm there to talk about one's life path, where, what your gifts are and how to best use them to serve, how to best find one's most authentic self and learn to be able to express that and work through any blocks that we have to our creativity. And all of this can be explored through using the cards.
Yeah. And I think that's important because so many of these things are sort of classified as like fortune telling or tools of intuition, whatever they are. And yes, they are, but I feel this way very much about the I Ching too. I know, I'm guessing Sacha would agree that they're never going to give you a direct answer or say, don't do that, go through this door. You would be denying you free will. It is always some sort of guide or something to consider rather than like, this is the path. And I feel like you give readings like that too. And also you're very emphatic that you're not intuitive. You are very intuitive, you know that, but I know you don't want to play that role in people's lives.
What I tell people is I have intuitive flashes that come while I'm doing a reading, but intuition isn't always right. And my goal is to give people information to be able to choose their future, not to tell them what their future is going to be. Tarot gives you sort of visions of alternative paths and alternative futures, and helps you decide the way you want to go. I think that really it's all about finding agency rather than denying someone's agency.
Beautiful. All right. You want to take it away and teach us?
Sure, absolutely. I hope everybody has a deck and some writing implements. We're going to go through some things. You'll see me moving papers because I've taken notes because there are a lot of things I want to cover. The workshop is called How to Find Your Own Personal Meaning in Tarot. And I hope that we're going to cover these three subject areas. I want you to feel confident in your ability to really see a tarot card and find your own personal meaning in it. So we're going to spend some time learning how to look at a card, how to take it in from the smallest details to the big picture and all the symbology. We'll spend some time talking about the different ways people interpret cards over time, the different systems people use. As you know, my system is primarily Kabbalistic, but there are people who use astrology and astrological correspondences with the cards. There are people who use alchemy. There are all kinds of systems that people use to find meaning in the symbols. And with the Waite-Smith deck that I recommend you use, I sometimes refer to it as the warehouse of Western symbolism, because it is just packed with symbols going back to ancient Egypt and going up through the Renaissance, from just about every religion and mythic system in that period. But it is Western, as I say, it is the warehouse of Western symbolism, and that is one of its limitations. It is, in this way, it is ethnocentric. It is a very white deck, for example, and some of the images seem to be, and I say seem, to sort of show a kind of a gender binary. I actually teach people to see past that, because I think of the cards not representing people necessarily so much as principles. So we'll go into some of these systems, as I say. And then that's the last thing I want you to do is sort of learn the card a day practice. I'm sure many of you already pull a card a day, but I want to talk to you about a particular way of doing it, preparing yourself, then working with the card that you pull, and then what you can do afterwards. So with that, let's see. I talked about the Waite-Smith deck. Talked about that. Did it all. There's something else I want to talk about the Waite-Smith deck that I think is important. We were talking about therapy. One of the things that I love about the Waite-Smith deck is that when you look at the expressions on the people's faces in the deck, or at the situation that you see in the scene, it can actually feel ambiguous. Is this positive? Is this negative? Is this person happy about what's going on? Are they wary? What do they feel? And it allows you, as someone working with the card, to project what you think is going on. I sometimes say it's kind of like a Rorschach test in a way, but there's another psychological tool which is actually more appropriate. It's called the thematic apperception test, where psychologists actually show people black and white images of scenes where something is going on but you don't really quite know what. And the therapist asks you to say what you think is going on and what you think the feelings are that are happening in that image. And that, is really one of the techniques that I use with tarot, because it helps people sort of find their own or project their own inner stuff onto the cards. And that's how we really get deep. But this means that with any image, there is no necessarily right narrative or right interpretation. There are traditional interpretations, but that might not be the right interpretation for you. Any card can have a kaleidoscope of meanings. And when you do a card a day practice, for example, you will find that over time, let's say over the course of a year, let's say the Five of Pentacles comes up, 7 times over the course of a year. You'll find that the second or third time it comes up, it doesn't mean the same thing because it's a different day and you're coming at it from a different mindset, and you might have a different question in your heart, so that the card's response and your relationship to it are going to be different. This is one of the interesting things about the cards, is that, as I say, there is no, while there are traditional meanings, don't get caught in a fixed meaning for any card, because just as you will change from day to day, so will the card. Okay, so let's actually get into an exercise. When I say that, we're going to learn to really see a card, I want you for a moment to look through your deck and take out the star card. I'm going to put it up here, but I want you to be able to sort of see it really close up. So if you have a deck, please take it out. If you don't have a deck, please go to a website where you can find the image and make the image part of your screen, but minimize it for a moment because I don't actually want you to spend a lot of time looking at it just yet. And so in fact, I'm going to turn this over. Just find the card and put it down, put it face down. So people worry about how they're going to memorize all the card meanings. And that's something that comes with time. When you do the card a day practice, this will help you with that. But when you're starting your tarot journey, more important than learning the traditional meanings is actually learning how to see a card and honing your powers of observation, becoming a tarot detective. Now, Edgar Allan Poe actually established the father of modern detectives with a story called The Purloined Letter from 1844. It features a detective named Auguste Dupin, and he uncovers the whereabouts of a missing letter, which actually was in plain sight of everybody in the story. And this is where we get the trope and the phrase hiding in plain sight. And academics have actually proven that we all have, what is called inattentional blindness. Even though our eyes may be open and looking at something in our field of vision, we don't always see it. They actually had an experiment where they had two students passing a basketball back and forth, and they asked the people watching on screen, this was done on a television, to count how many times the ball passed back and forth. Well, while the students were passing the ball back and forth, something else happened on the screen. A person in a gorilla suit actually entered the scene, walked to the middle of the screen, beat his chest, looked really close, and then walked off. Not half of the people reported seeing that gorilla, right? They were busy focusing on the basketball going back and forth. They never saw a gorilla. And that's, this is a dangerous thing for people if, let's say, you need your powers of observation because you work for the FBI or Homeland Security. So it's really essential to be able to see all the details of things that are going on. And how they teach people now in Homeland Security is they take them to art galleries to look at art and train them to observe and appreciate art in a particular way so that they take in more details than they ever would have otherwise. And that's what we're going to do now, because in fact, tarot cards are really, each one is like an individual painting. And when you own a deck, it's like you have your own portable art museum. So we're going to spend some time trying out your powers of observation. I'm going to time you for 60 seconds. And here is your instruction. Simply turn over the card that's face down, the star, and look at it carefully for the next 60 seconds. Make a mental note of every detail and commit those details to memory. Okay? Go. Don't write anything yet. You're just looking. Okay, time's up. Turn your card back over. Now I'd like you to take a couple of minutes. This is where you're going to be doing the writing. Write a list of everything you saw on the card, every detail. Don't spend time looking for meaning or interpreting the symbols or the details. We're not doing that yet. If you ever saw Dragnet and the detective Jack Webb, where he would say, "Just the facts, ma'am, just the facts." Well, just the facts, that's just what you're doing here. And you have 2 minutes to write down all of what you saw. I'll refill my glass. Okay, time is up. Pencils down. Who would like to share their list of what they saw? Since I can't see all the faces, everybody, I'm out of gallery view. If Maria, I see you raised your hand, so if you would unmute, go right ahead. If you can't unmute, hold on a second. I'll ask you to, oh, wait a second. There we go.
Okay.
You got it? Okay.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I wrote down nude woman holding 2 cups, pouring them out in a continuous flow, star in the middle of her chest, a large star above her, 2 small stars at the top of the card, 3 across the middle, 2 below. Her expression is pensive, looking down slightly, long hair flowing down like the water, nighttime, and it shows most of her body.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else want to add some details that they saw that Maria did not list? Francesca? Let's see, I have to unmute you.
Mine had a child and 2 dogs.
Okay, stop. We have to be all working from the same deck.
Oh, snap. Okay, sorry. Sorry.
Otherwise, we're not talking about the same thing.
Okay.
So if you have a Waite-Smith deck, and you didn't hear things that you wrote down, please let us know what you have on your list. Victoria?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I wrote 7 small stars that are white, 1 big star that's yellow. I saw a bird on the top of the tree in the right-hand corner. I saw a mountain in the background, green grass, I saw 10 little plants on the grass, like little like swirly things. I think they're plants. Human figure in the center. I think everything else she already said.
Great. Okay. Sharon, I see your hand up. Is there any other thing that you have to add that you didn't hear?
I have, she's kneeling, but one foot's in the water and one's on the land. And then she's pouring out two, I call them casks, and she's pouring one into the water and one onto the land. And then everything else was already said.
So you can see that, you know, some people got some details, some people focused on other details. I'm going to take you through what I have listed. And, if there's something that you didn't see, you can look at the card as we go through it. From the top of the card, there's the number 17 in Roman numerals. There's a blue sky with no clouds. And I want to note that the colors can sometimes change by the version of the deck you have. There are 8 stars, all of them with 8 points, 7 smaller stars and 1 central larger yellow star. 4 of the stars, little white stars, are on the left, 3 are on the right. In the distance, there's a mountain range and it is purplish. Grass covers the ground with some small flowers. Kudos to, I guess, was it Victoria or Sharon who actually counted the number of flowers? I didn't think to do that. There are 10. That's really great. I love that. There's a mound, a small hill on the right with a leafy tree. And there's an orange bird in the tree. Its wings spread with a long beak. There's a small pond. There's a naked woman. And the only hair on her body is the blonde yellow hair on her head. She's kneeling with 1 foot in the pond. And when you look at the foot in the pond, it looks like it's actually on the water, not in it. And her other knee, leg, foot is on the ground. In each hand, she has some kind of a pitcher. It's earthen colored with some decoration on it that I can't make out. Water from the pitchers are being poured on the ground, and that creates some rivulets with one stream going into the pond, and the other pitcher is being poured into the pond. In the lower right hand of the card, there are some squiggly lines. Those are the initials of the artist. At the bottom of the card is the title of the card written in all capital letters, The Star, followed by a period. And outside the border of the image, there's a copyright notice. Obviously, you didn't think some of these things are important. Some of these things, for the purposes of meditation and working with the card aren't. I don't think the copyright notice is something that you really need to pay attention to. But I asked you to do this exercise because, as you can see, everybody saw some things, but not all things. What we see really tells us what is important to us, and what we miss also tells us what we need to know. So now I want to talk about some other things about the card. The first thing I want you to write down is the mood of the card. I don't want you to write down what you think the card means, but the mood that the artist intended to convey. Is it mysterious, foreboding, celebratory, playful? Just a one-word description that is your sense of the mood. Next, take a moment to write down how the card image as a whole makes you feel. And by that, I mean write down the feeling, the emotion the card gives you. Is it positive, negative, optimistic, sad, curious, frustrated, worried? Just a couple of words. Now we're going to go a little bit into the component parts, the symbols. Since the name of the card is the star, we'll concentrate for a few minutes on the main symbol, the star, the central star in the sky. We're still not writing down what the symbol means. We're simply going to spend time with associative thinking. Does the image of a star call to mind a story you know? This can be a folk tale or a sacred story from a culture or a religion, or it can be a story from popular culture, like a book or a movie, or even a song lyric. Make a written note of these associations that you have with a star. And if there was an important experience in your life where a star played a part. And of course, how you feel about stars. Write down anything else about a star you think is important to write down that isn't an interpretation of what it means. And we'll take 2 minutes for this. All right, next we're going to move on to the other big image in the card. I want you to take a few minutes to do the same thing, writing about the image of the woman, in particular that she is a naked woman in nature. And does this, image of the woman, once again, does it call to mind a story from any source? A movie, a folk tale, a sacred story, a story even in your own life, when you went skinny dipping at night, if that actually happened. How does nakedness make you feel? And is there anything else about this that you think is important to write down that, once again, isn't an interpretation of what it means, just associations you have with the image? Why somehow I feel like I need to have the Jeopardy music. Okay, So now you're actually ready to start using your powers of interpretation. After giving all this detailed thought to the two main symbols, take a few minutes to think about and then write down your own personal interpretation of the card. What does it mean for you? Does this card have a message for you today? Is it asking you a question? I often tell clients that cards don't only answer questions, sometimes they ask them. So is this card asking you a question? And if so, what is it? If this was a card, if you imagine this was the card that you pulled today for your daily contemplation, how would you interpret it? Spend a few minutes writing this answer. Mind, there are no right or wrong fixed meanings to the cards. Let me repeat, there are no right or wrong fixed meanings to the cards. Yeah, there are some meanings in interpretations that have become part of the tradition, and they've worked our way into our unconscious understanding of the cards, and you may have tuned into that, so it may have been what you wrote. But whatever meaning you found in the card now is the meaning for you now, today. Because on another day, if you look at this card again, you'll be coming to the card with a different frame of mind or a different question in your head. So you might focus on another detail or find another meaning. Would anybody be willing to share their interpretation of the card or share some of the stories and associations that the symbols brought up for you and the personal meaning that you got? Once again, I can't see the raised hands, so if we can go back to gallery. Easier. Alicia, go ahead.
Hi. So I took it as being in alignment and balance with my divine feminine and Mother Earth. Having enough for myself and enough to pour into others. Being able to diversify my energy into different things, which is something I've been trying to sort through lately. And feeling guided and present with my spirit guides and being on the right path.
Thank you so much. And this is one of the reasons why I love doing this, because you've given me an important new insight into this card. I never thought about how in pouring two pictures, it actually communicates that there's enough of you to pour into more than one place. And that was what came up for you in this card. And I just thought that was beautiful. So thank you. Anyone else want to share? I see, is it Anaya?
Yes, that's right. And I loved that too, that sharing. That was really beautiful. It gave insight. I put down how it landed for me, and especially with the image of the woman who seems unapologetically authentic and comfortable in her body. I put this card as promising hopefulness, abundance, new opportunities if I just trust my strength, the capacity to use my gifts, and own my authenticity to be as I am, strong, capable, and confident in being able to find balance as I trust and find grounding in the beautiful flow of life.
That's beautiful. And I'm going to say it also aligns with a lot of the traditional meaning. You had a lot of words in there that really, they jumped out at me as, oh, yes, in the books it says this, in the books it says that. And it's perfectly right. And it's right for you in this moment. It really, and it's a reflection of what that card means. Claudia.
Hello. So mine are a little more just phrases that came to me. Just the beauty of vulnerability and being able to pour out your heart and soul. Pouring out what does not serve you to make room for what does. Trusting Mother Earth to hold you and shine light for you as she gives us all we need. Letting go to go with the flow of life versus being abrupt. The universe is lighting the way for you, so fly free of your burdens. And just the changing of your role in life, so operating at a higher vibration. Maybe I saw her as carrying less weight so that she could make room for the hopefulness that's to come.
Hopefulness is one of the key words that follows this card around, as is vulnerability, the courage of vulnerability. You mentioned that right up front. So, I wanted to say here that, as sort of tarot detectives, when you take the time to really look at the cards and live with the symbols, you need a book. Get it. Is it Lourdes? You want to give it a try?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Everyone's been so beautiful. The symbolism I found with this card, it reminded me when I was skinny dipping at night and was so freeing and beautiful. So it reminded me to let go of things that no longer serve me, negative thoughts, self-criticism, actions or inactions that do not serve my higher purpose, releasing them to feel the freedom again of the night I went skinny dipping.
Beautiful. So, this is something that was personal to you, but nevertheless brought you to the meaning of the card. And it sort of showed you the meaning and the memory of something that happened in your life. Claire?
Hello. The question that came up for me was, how can I move forward as a powerful woman in light, through light and not shadow? And I wrote, you must give and you must take. It's okay to take. Because she's pulling from the well and also giving to the well, which in my 20s, I'm like learning how to receive and not just like empty my well. And then I wrote, when you're fed, you can feed. And then the last thing I wrote was threatening. That word came to mind because I think this image of this woman that is so inspiring and hopeful for me, I'm like, sometimes it's hard to step into that because it can be threatening for people.
Beautiful. Thank you. Let's see. So we have two more, and so let's wrap up with the next two, because we have a lot of other things we're going to do. Heidi?
Hi, Mark. I'm loving this. The symbolism when you asked us to write about that, I wrote about the star being a connection to something you can feel, like in your senses, but you can't touch. it's far away and you're dreaming and you're scheming and remembering other places and times and connections. So it's a lot about imagination and nighttime and romance and imagination. And then the woman, really, it was interesting when you asked about the symbolism, it stirred up a memory I have of a time in my life where I had a backpacking company with my husband. He was a mountain guide, and my gift was to be cooking. So I had a really practical role to play. And I was always on the edge of a lake. We're always camping on a lake in the Rocky Mountains. We'd just find water somewhere. And I would be bending down and getting the water for making the food. So it was a very practical role I was playing. So it really brought me to being like industrious and helpful and kind of like, you know, taking care of other people. So my interpretation was the connection between like bringing the stars, like the imagination and the otherworldliness to like the life of a householder and the practical elements. And it is actually what I'm kind of is a challenge for me now about how to bring both of those two things kind of together in this life.
Beautiful. Thank you. Victoria?
Yeah, hi. One thing that's come up for me with this card, because this card comes up for me a lot, and it's something I never thought of before, but I got this time, like while I was really looking at it, was to kind of just like focus on what's in front of me. Like she's only looking down, she's not looking around. It's like very unbothered and like very peaceful and undistracted. So that was something that came for me with the closer look this time.
Great. See, and once again, this is a personal observation which is connected to the message you need to hear. Oh.
You want to join me?
Okay. I just want to mention that some of the associations that came up for me with the star itself is the North Star, right? Which is a star that guides people, and another star that guided people, which was the star of the Magi, and the morning star, the brightest star in the sky, which is Venus, the goddess of love, which you can also connect to the woman. Some of the traditional meanings for this card is finding hope and optimism after a crisis, or feeling a new inspiration or motivation, staying calm and collected and finding peace in a difficult situation. So as you do this practice with other cards, you're gonna, I urge you to always, when you first look at a card, to observe without interpretation. Then go through the steps of thinking about your associations with the symbols. And once you've done that, then it's time to sort of think, okay, so what does this mean for me? And what it calls up for you. So we're going to do that with some other cards as we move forward, but I want to talk a little bit next about the structure of the deck itself. As you probably know, you can think of the tarot deck as two different decks. There is the major arcana, which are the 22 cards that are more sort of like archetypes, like the star that we were just looking at. And then there is the minor arcana, which are more like playing cards that we grew up with. It's divided into 4 suits with cards numbered 1 through 10, although unlike playing cards, which have 3 more cards, a jack, a queen, and a king, a tarot deck has 4 more cards, a page, a knight, a king, and a queen. And the way this deck is structured is one of the ways that we use systems to find meaning in the cards. You know, as I said before, that the cards are like a warehouse of Western symbolism. And one of the symbols that is important, I misplaced this since I have already put the card up, but you probably saw it earlier. As you know, I use Kabbalah as my main system. And if you look at the 10 of Pentacles, which I think, there it is, you actually see the diagram of the tree of life right there in the card. It's the pattern of the gold discs overlaid on the scene. This is one of the places where the creators of this deck tip their hand and make it really directly clear. It's an open secret that the main system of meaning for this deck is based on the Kabbalistic tree of life. And that's what that diagram is. If you've done a reading with me, you already know that, in fact, the spread that I use is based on the tree of life. If you're into Western astrology, you'll probably notice that there are cards that have astrological symbols on them. You know, this is one of my Warehouse of Western Symbolism desks because in the center of the Wheel of Fortune, there are some astrological symbols. There are some symbols from alchemy. There's a Sphinx and an Anubis from Egyptian mythology. And then on the four sides, you see these four creatures with wings that, depending upon your orientation, these are symbols for the four main apostles, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, or they are the four animals, the four faces of angels that Ezekiel saw in his vision. So this card is filled with stuff. Oh, and it also, besides the Roman numerals, it has Hebrew letters on it. So there's a lot going on. If you're interested in astrological correspondences for the card, you can learn, in fact, that every card corresponds to a 10% angle on the chart, a decan. So that if you're working with your birth chart, you'll find that certain cards have special meaning for you. It's one way you can find your birth card. My birth card, according to that system, is the Hermit, which I rather love, and it tells me things about myself, and I use it as a way to sort of do other kinds of inner exploration. The cards also have alchemical symbols. Now, the more you know about alchemy, and this is where Jung comes in, because if you're a student of Jungian psychology, he had theories about alchemy's system of inner transformation. And these systems, these symbols open up another world of interpretive meaning that you can find for each card. But I'd like to talk for a few minutes about two of the easiest systems that you can work with. Those are the four elements and numerology. When these cards were created during the Renaissance, there was a theory that there were four elements, and this goes back to the ancient Greeks. It was taught by Aristotle and others, that all matter is made up of these four elements in varying proportions. And these also correspond to humors in the body. The elements are fire, water, air, and earth, and they correspond to the four suits: wands and fire, cups and water, swords and air, and pentacles with earth. Now, I know I haven't spoken about the structure of the whole deck yet. We'll get there in a little bit, but I want you to have an experience with some of these cards before we get into the rest of it. So let's go through the elements and then some of the numbers as a quick way of finding meanings for all of these cards. On page 3 of your handout, you should have information for the four elements so that you don't have to take notes when I talk about it. I'm actually going to go there now. Let's see, and I'll share the screen. So if you don't have this yet, you can see it. Let's see. Where are we? There we go. Okay, I'm hoping this is visible for folks in a way that is so that it's not too small or too big. If it's too small, let me know. Actually, I will make it a little bigger anyway. So these four suits, you'll notice that there's the suit of fire. I want you to add your own associations for all of these. So the suit of wands is connected to fire. So this means all of the cards in this suit are in one way are going to be connected to action, drive, or inspiration, willpower, passion, or ambition. It's also connected to the Kabbalistic world of Atzilut, which is the world of spirit. And I want to talk a little bit about, we'll look at this for a second. If you can see on my, take these down. You can see the Knight of Wands. You might notice that his plume and on his armor, it actually looks like, even though those are feathers, it looks like flame. There are clues throughout all of the 4 suits that tell you about the corresponding element, and there are emotions connected to these elements. With wands, that emotion is really passion and drive, and the will sort of to explore. And because knights are always seekers, they're always on a quest. The Knight of Wands is someone who is always in search of the new. If you were to get the Knight of Wands in a romantic reading, this is somebody who would be really passionate and would get you all inspired, but their level of interest may not stay with you. They might be looking for someone new really quickly. So that's one of the things, that when you look at the elements and their qualities and you connect them to the cards, you come to a meaning. Then we'll come to the, so also I want you to, as I say, write down any associations you have with the element of fire in the suit of wands. Next, we have the water and the suit of cups. And, when you look at the Queen of Cups, well, the water is all over the place in this card. Her dress is actually turning into water. And where fire is active, water is considered passive. Remember, these are generalizations because I think a tsunami, for example, is pretty active. But water is about feelings and emotions, love and relationships, intuition and healing. So when you have a lot of cups cards, that's often what the subject of the reading is going to be about. If you look at the King of Cups, one of the cards that I really love, here he is on a platform that seems to be floating calmly above a stormy sea of emotions. In the background, you can see there's a ship being thrown by the waves and a fish being thrown out of the waves, but the king is floating calmly. He is someone who knows how to work with the power of emotion. And, he has emotion, but emotion does not have him. So if you have any other personal associations with water, it would be good to, write those on this list or do this later, when you have time. So then we come to the element of air, which connects to the suit of swords, which is why you see lots of moving clouds in many of the cards of this suit. The element is active and it's connected to the world of thinking, the intellect, logic, reason, ideas, also preconceived notions and prejudices, ideas that you are stuck with, or your ability to analyze and take things apart. When you look at the Knight of Swords, you see these storm clouds and the expression on the horse's face and the face of the knight, it gives us a feeling of anger and conflict. So that's also something that comes up in the suit of swords. Our last element is the suit of pentacles. And that is connected to the element of earth. And I want to talk about this suit for a minute, particularly because before this deck was created, or at the beginning of the 20th century, this suit in all tarot decks previously was called coins. And it was only about money and work and the material world. But when Waite and Smith redesigned the deck, they kept the gold disc of the coin, but they put the 5-pointed star in it, a pentagram, which is a symbol of spirit and magic. And they were doing their best to sort of secretly code that the spiritual is not separate from the material, right? And I always like to relate this to Einstein's theory, which came out around the same time as this deck. His equation E = mc², that is energy is simply matter that is moving at the speed of light squared. So if you think of everything that around you in the room, and in fact, you yourself, everything is just energy moving at different, slower speeds. And the ability to actually experience everything as energy is really a highly developed occult skill. And it's one of the things that many people who work with tarot do their best to do, to be able to see how the elements in all of these cards are merely energy and how it flows through our lives, where it's blocked, and how we can remove those blocks. So, besides the elements, we also have number. And here's where we're going to get into a little Kabbalah. There are several systems of numerology, but for me, it's Kabbalah. And so we're going to look at the images on the cards as it connects to the Kabbalistic system. So one of the things, you saw the diagram of the Tree of Life on the 10 of Pentacles. Here you see it on this slide. And you'll notice that there's the Hebrew name of each of these Sephirot, these sort of circular nodes on this kind of subway system of the soul. The very top Sephirah is called Keter, and that's where the aces live. The second Sephirah is called Chokmah, and it's where the twos are. So that each one of the Sephirot is connected to the numeric cards. All of the cards that are numbered 7, like the 7 of Cups, the 7 of Swords, the 7 of Wands, the 7 of Pentacles, they are connected to the Sephirah of Netzach. And if you look at the keywords that are in this chart, you will see keywords that connect to the Sephirah. And then when you look at a card, you'll think, how do these keywords relate to this image? Well, let's look at it. We're going to look at the Sephirah of Netzach, which, as I mentioned, is connected to all of the cards that are numbered 7. And you can see what the keywords are. With the 7 of Wands, when I see that, I think, okay, this is somebody who wants victory, who is clearly enduring something, has got the will and the fortitude to stand up in this situation, has focused energy, tenacity, and determination, definitely, and resolve, definitely. So that's one of the ways you can sort of understand what's going on in that card. This is somebody you can say who is standing up for themselves. Although, once again, if you're using your powers of observation, you might also think, what's missing in this card? You might look at the 6 wands that are sort of standing up against him, and you might realize, I don't see anybody there. They could be just stuck in the ground, and he could just be defensive, but, defensive and there's no reason. So these are things, you have to think about when you look at the images. I also ask people when this card comes up if they notice anything unusual about this figure. Some people actually key in on the fact, you might not be able to see it so small on the screen, but he is wearing 1 shoe and 1 boot. And I like to relate this to his fierce individualism. He is willing to sort of do things the way he wants to and stand up for himself regardless of criticism of other people. So another thing I want to say about how these keywords connect to the meaning of these cards is that the cards can either show the positive or negative side of these keywords. So when you look at the 7 of Cups, what you see is you see the back of somebody looking at all these cups in the clouds. And you may notice that one of the things that's in one of these cups is a castle on a mountaintop. So that I, sometimes call this card the castles in the air card. This is somebody who has a dream, right? But they aren't focused. They don't have focused energy because they have all these different dreams. They've got these 7 different things that they want, so they aren't focused. They don't know what their mission is. While they do have an ambition, they haven't got the willpower to choose. And they don't seem to be able to make a commitment to any one of these things. So they have a divided attention, which means they're not going to be able to persevere. So this to me, and I sometimes refer to this as the ADD card. And in fact, and sometimes when it's come up for certain people in certain spreads in a particular position, I will ask whether, ADD is part of their experience. And it is really, I continue to be surprised how often that seems to be the case. So I'm not going to spend time with the other 2 cards, but, this is where you, when you have the time, can really look at, each one of the keywords in the previous list, and then you pull out the corresponding cards for that those keywords and consider what that meaning might be. But once again, you do this after you've done all this other work of thinking about the element and looking at the symbols and really looking at the card and taking it in the way we did at the beginning of the hour. Let's see. So I'm now going to give you a very simple guide to the Kabbalistic correspondences. Let me make that a little bigger so you can see that more fully. Once again, you see the tree of life here, and this time the pathways have information on them. As I mentioned, the minor arcana cards numbered 1 through 10 in each suit correspond to the meanings of the 10 Sephirot as noted in that diagram. The 22 major arcana cards correspond to 22 Hebrew letters and the paths on the tree. There are actually 2 different systems of correspondences and 2 different sort of systems with different paths. You may want to, sort of look at and notice the difference between this tree and the tree on the earlier page. You may not notice it immediately, but one of the things is, like, you look down at the 10th Sephirot on the bottom. On the previous tree, there was only 1 pathway going from number 9 to 10. But on the diagram that you see on screen right now, there are 3 pathways that get to 10, from 7, 8, and 9. So the 4 suits correspond to the 4 Kabbalistic worlds and the 4-letter name of the divine. And the court cards correspond to a concept called the Partsufim, a Kabbalistic concept that we're not going to go over. It's a little complicated, but I want to talk a little bit about each rank so you have a sort of a general understanding of a way of thinking conceptually about each court card. All pages are about youthfulness, the desire to learn something. It's about starting out, and it is about innovating. Knights are about seeking, questing, or protecting. Queens and kings, people who have done readings with me, you'll know that I often talk about how we don't have queens and kings or even knights in the United States. But I like to think about these cards as representative of our sovereignty as adult human beings, how we feel complete and self-governing. Nobody is the boss of you, as it were, and that you are at the height of your powers in a particular field. So when a king or a queen comes up, it really is about a statement of where you are in your life and certain ways you can use your powers. Queens, of course, are about nurturing. They're also about planning, creating, strategizing, and educating. whereas kings are more about managing and visionary thinking. Right? And these are generalizations, of course. So I also want you to think about the tree of life as a step-down transformer. You know, the very top Sephirot is where the divine energy sort of comes into us. When I do a tree of life reading, you know, I refer to the card at that position as the Shoresh HaNeshama, the sort of key to your soul, and it is your direct connection to the divine. And the 10th card is really where we are now. And the other cards are really about how the energy from the divine works its way into our lives and where we are blocked to that energy and where we are open to it, and how that affects us as regards to the question that is being asked. Let's see. So, you know, when I do a tree of life reading, this is a very brief introduction to this sort of thing. You know, as you already realize, each Sephirot has its own meaning and its own energy. But when you put a card on top of that position, you're creating a relationship between that Sephirotic energy and the energy of the card that's being put down. So in this example, what you see is the Four of Pentacles being put down on the Sephirot of Netzach. So what we see is a relationship between Chesed and Netzach. And this is one of the ways that I approach interpreting cards. I'm not going to pretend that this is easy, which is why I'm just saying this is a very brief introduction to kind of what I do. And, you know, what I did with the 10 cards, that's the easiest thing I can sort of show you about the Kabbalistic way of interpreting things. And it's all explained in my book. And my book, in fact, only uses minor arcana cards for this 49-day practice, which is still rather profound. So let's see. We did that. 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 Went ahead. I didn't even look at my notes, and there it is. So as I said, in your handout, you have a list of keywords for the 10 Sephirot. If you're interested in learning the Kabbalistic system, as I say, the good way to start is by taking one of the corresponding cards for a Sephirah, looking at all the details and symbols as we did earlier, and then connecting it with the Sephirah and writing down your impressions and interpretations. If you do this with one card a day for the next 50 days, you're going to have your own meanings for more than half the cards in the deck. But that is a programmed way of learning and a guided study program. But I'd really like to talk today about the card a day practice. So we'll stop sharing this for a moment. There we go. This is something that many of you may already do. You can spend as little as 5 minutes on it or an hour, as much as you want, depending on how deep you want your exploration to go. I actually do this at first thing in the morning, and I spend anywhere from 15 to 40 minutes on it. You can do it in the morning, you can do it at night, really any time, as long as you're doing it at the same time every day, because it's about establishing a routine and a rhythm. If you do it in the morning, it can be about setting your intention for the day. If you do it at night, it can be a help to review the events of the day, and maybe even a prompt for a dream if you keep a dream journal. You can make it part of a daily ritual. So if you have a meditation practice, you can meditate first and then look at the card. Do you do yoga in the morning? Do it right after you've done your yoga practice, when your mind is open and relaxed. If you have a prayer practice, you can do it after that. But it's always best to do it when your mind is clear, so you're open to the images and you're better connected to your subconscious mind. As I say, I pull a card in the morning. I say a short prayer asking for my heart and mind to be opened for guidance. I shuffle, cut, and take a card from the top. I spend some time just taking the image in, and then I journal about it. What message I think it has for me, or if it has a question for me and what that answer might be. Some days I might ask a specific question based on my mood when I wake up. You know, what can I do to love myself more today? Or if I'm feeling unfocused, what do I need to focus on? It got kicked out, right? For me, the practice is about seeking guidance, not about making a prediction for the day to come. But that said, it can prime my mind to pay attention for opportunities and challenges that I might have missed otherwise, which is why I like to do this in the morning. And I really recommend you keep a daily record of the cards you pull daily and journal about it as well. It's a way for you to log your impressions of the card, and so you can see how, over time, your interpretations change, and how, over time, you actually build a cumulative and deep understanding of the nuances and meanings of a card and how it can change based on a kaleidoscope of variables. Now, it's okay if you want to go to a website like learntarot.com or pull down a book to check the meaning. But don't do that first. You know, in the handout, I've included several online sources and several books I recommend where you could look for meanings. But before reaching for a source, simply do the practice of sitting with the image and noticing the details. It's much more meaningful for you to sort of come to the meaning yourself rather than sort of copying it down from a book. Because once you've done this internal work and you check your intuitive sense of meaning against the online sources, you'll find that you've actually created your own personal tarot meaning. Really, the card a day practice is the way to tarot mastery. Now, I want to give you an example of how this happened for me one day. I'm going to show you a particular card that I pulled on a particular day. It's the Queen of Swords. This was back when I was still working a corporate job, and I knew I had a particularly challenging day ahead. So I asked the question, what do I need to know today so that my experience on the job will be positive for me and everyone I work with? And of course, I got the Queen of Swords, which is not one of my favorite cards. She looks stern and forbidding. So let's look at the image and I'll tell you what my process was when I worked with the card that day. As you already know from the keywords about the suit of swords and the element, it's connected to the intellect and idea and smarts. Of course, swords cut. So the queen is not only smart, but she's good at analyzing problems, taking things apart, and cutting away what's not necessary. Sharp swords, sharp mind, but also the ability to say cutting things. One of my go-to interpretations for both the King and Queen of Swords is they represent somebody who's good at detecting bullshit, and they aren't afraid to call bullshit when they see it. So that doesn't always make them very popular. When this card came up, I had to laugh because I had a reputation on the job for calling bullshit, and not always to my benefit and not always at the right time. So I took the appearance of a queen that morning as a warning to put a brake on my natural inclination to sort of call things out, to be more thoughtful about how I spoke about things so it would have positive results for me and others. I was also known when I was on the job as being very empathetic, but having a quick temper. And I noticed the Queen of Swords with one hand seems to be beckoning, but the other hand is holding a sword. And I had to ask myself whether I was giving people mixed signals that day and whether people thought that I was looking to lure somebody in and trap them, right? This is about self-awareness. and not being afraid to look at one's negative traits when the tarot reflects them back to you. So to get all Queen of Swords for a minute, this is not fair, new age, airy-fairy bullshit. You know, the cards are there to show you the good and the bad in yourself and to help you own it and turn the energy in a way that is positive. You know, as I say, I don't think of the tarot as predictive. I think of it as something for inner exploration and self-improvement. It's a way that I can build on my best qualities and to do the spiritual laundry when I'm confronted with qualities that aren't as neat and clean. So what I did that day was I wrote down my notes and then I added the card as the wallpaper on my phone so that later in the day, if I found myself in a situation where I might react without reflecting first, I knew to look at my phone, and it functioned as a brake on my more impulsive desire to blurt out something sharp. Right?
Mark, I just want to just quickly on time. I know we're at 90 minutes. If people need to run, I am recording it so you can have access. Just acknowledging that. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry if you have to go. It's not left, but I want to talk a little bit more about something that we do with the card a day practice, or something that I do and that I want to offer you if you're going to use this practice for self-examination and reflection. After you explored the possible meanings of the card, write a positive affirmation for yourself based on what you learned for the card. And then take a few minutes to speak your affirmation out loud. Now, many of you probably work with affirmations already, so I'm going to ask you to do this affirmation practice a little differently, because I've never believed that simply repeating a phrase makes it so. You know, when you speak an affirmation or you make a commitment, there's almost always a voice in your head that speaks up and makes a counter affirmation. Really, the affirmation practice is a way to meet your inner critic or inner saboteur, to engage with the voices in your head that you may have introjected from other people and are there to subvert or undermine you. So when you speak an affirmation, then take a moment to listen for that inner voice that contradicts your intention. And then don't push it down, engage it. Now is the time for dialogue. And you can do this with either role-playing and giving actual voice to your inner voice and challenging it with a series of questions. You can get all Byron Katie on it, on your inner critic, if you know that process. But however you do it, it's about challenging this hidden saboteur and disarming its ability to undermine you by questioning what it is saying about you. Speak aloud or journal this dialogue. Either way, this is a powerful way to clear away your inner blocks to really manifesting the result you want to see in the world and that you're speaking with your affirmation. Once you've done this, you can take time throughout the day to spend a minute again with your affirmation. And as many of you know, if you've done readings with me, if you do this practice before bed, you might instead, and if you do the journaling, you might use the cards for active imagination. As I said, I was fortunate enough to be in therapy with a Jungian who encouraged me to use an active imagination practice. This is a little different. After you do your initial writing about your meaning, set the card up in front of you so you can let your eyes focus on it, so that it becomes the center of your attention. One reason my book is called Tarot and the Gates of Light is that I see every card as a gate into another level of reality. And in this exercise, I want you to let the image of the card become all that you see. And then see yourself, imagine yourself stepping into that landscape, into the world of the card, and able to interact with the objects, animals, and people. And as in the world of folktales, every object and creature in this landscape can speak with you if you want to speak with them. So approach the one you want to speak with and ask any questions you might have, or approach the figure in the card and ask if it has a message for you. Even you might want to approach the figure that you want to avoid and talk to this. But take some time to explore this waking dreamscape. And if there's, something in the distance in the card that's down a pathway, maybe you want to go a little further and explore things that actually aren't visible in the card. If there's a house, go into it. See if there's a treasure in there for you. You can go anywhere the card shows you, that even if it isn't in the image, and find the treasures that are there for you alone. Once you've received the gift of the card, thank whoever you've spoken to and leave the card the same way you've entered it. Step out of the frame of the card and return to your regular reality. Then write it all down. Journaling is an essential part of tarot practice, but particularly here, because like a dream, the information you get from this kind of active imagination will disappear from your waking mind unless you write it down quickly. And of course, after this, when you go to sleep, this exercise may activate an important dream. So if you wake up with more information, write it down immediately. If a figure in a tarot card comes to me in a dream, they have information that I haven't fully understood, and I have to spend time with it. Now, there's something that's going to happen if you're doing the card a day practice. Somebody actually mentioned this earlier. This is something that I call the Cassandra card. You may remember in the story of the Trojan War, one of the daughters of the king of Troy had been cursed by Apollo to be able to tell the future, but no one would understand or believe her. And you will certainly at some point find that a card keeps turning up again and again, and you don't know why. This is your Cassandra card. It's coming there to tell you something, and you're not hearing it. Some people, for reasons that are obvious, I don't use this phrase, but some people actually call this the stalker card. One experience that I had was between December of 2022 and March 23, I pulled the Seven of Pentacles more than 15 times. Sometimes I'd get it several times in a week, and it drove me nuts because I wrote about it every time, trying to figure out, what is this card trying to tell me that I'm not getting? I understood it was an important message, but I wasn't getting it. And I spent time with this, obviously. After several months, I had an intuitive flash that this was connected to a project that I was working on kind of half-heartedly. I'd been researching my family tree on Ancestry.com, and I wasn't really following every root and branch. This is the Seven of Pentacles. This is somebody who's doing the root work, right? I wasn't really following every branch of my family. So I thought, okay, I'm going to throw myself into this with renewed energy. And within a couple of days, I discovered a branch of my family that no one knew about. They were all living overseas, distant cousins, and who I really wanted to connect with. And when I told all of my cousins here in the United States, it was like, oh, here's this group of people. We've got to know them. And it was opened up a whole new world to all of us that we knew nothing about. After I did this, the Seven of Pentacles stopped showing up regularly. Was there really a connection? I don't know. But it helped me get to a place that taught me something. So a Cassandra card is a pattern that repeats over time. And so when that happens to you, I want you to spend time with it. Now, I have a lot more stuff maybe about some other practices, but I want to take time for Q&A. And I know we've hit the 90-minute mark. So, maybe another time we can talk about doing 3-card readings because they're really easy and they're popular. And if you just use your observational techniques that we did today, leaving behind all the other systems, you will be able to do 3-card readings really quickly. So anyway, Oh, and the other thing I want to say, of course, is on your handout. You have a list of books with some recommendations and some websites. And there's also, my contact information. So if you have questions later on, if you find yourself doing the practice in my book, I am always available to answer questions about that. And if you want, please follow me on Instagram, because I don't post my card of the day every day, but frequently it's up there. And when I put it up, I'm not necessarily writing about what it means for me that day, but I talk about how you can look at it. So that's today's story.
Thanks, Mark. I don't know if you have to run straight away or if it's worth for people who can linger for, I don't know, another 10, 20 minutes. Is it worth pulling a card and then going through that process, or is that too private?
If people want to do that and go through that process, I'd be happy to sort of, if they're willing to share it, I think that would be beautiful.
Is that a good way to wrap? Okay. For people who want to sort of linger and pull a card and maybe have questions for Mark or want to share, and then I recorded this, although I feel like the handout is so comprehensive. Thank you for doing that. Or people have other questions, while people who want to meditate on their card, go for it.
And if you have a question you want to put in the chat, the best way to shuffle the deck before pulling the cards. So it's funny, Elisa actually asked me this question at the beginning before we opened the doors. I like to riffle shuffle. That's like that. But I sometimes do a spread called the five worlds reading, and I'm actually going to do a class on that in June. So if you want to learn about that, you can go to my site and you can take it. It'll be 90 minutes and it's only $20, and it's an easy spread to learn. But when I do that spread, because it's 5 different piles of cards, rather than shuffle, I mix the cards up on the table, kind of all over the table, and then I ask the person who's getting the reading to pull one card from each one of these 5 piles. And it makes a messy table, but it also makes a really fun, smart, good reading. The question about cards that are reversed. Oh, I was waiting for that question. So, you may not like my answer, which is that some readers, when they get a card reversed, they will read it as the opposite of what the card means upright. Some readers will not read the reversal at all and read it as if it were upright. Some readers will look at it and think it is the same as upright, but only weaker, or the positive energy of the card is in some way being blocked, and the cards around it may show why that is. I use all of these techniques. I choose how I'm going to read the card based on how many cards in the reading are reversed, what the cards are around it, because that sort of is the overall gestalt energy of the reading. So if I have a 10-card reading and 8 of the cards are reversed, that's information, and it's important information. And then the 2 cards that are right side up also have a particular kind of importance. But, it really is a balance of an intuitive decision about what to do when with the cards. But, people who've done readings with me will also recall that I probe with people how we might talk about the card. Because as I say, cards are symbols. They aren't signs. A sign is like a stop sign. It only means one thing, stop. But a symbol means lots of different things, and sometimes opposite of each other. One meaning could be positive, one could be negative. So I will probe with the client, what do you see in this symbol? And that way we know what the right way is to go. I may choose a meaning, but if the client, I say, if this doesn't land for you, let me know, and we'll choose one of the other meanings. Because this is, I think of readings as an explorative collaboration, for somebody to sort of go within. And I'm really just a guide in that process. So why do I work primarily with the Waite-Smith deck? Well, first the first reason is that it was the deck I was told to get when I was 16. And when I was 16, there were only really two decks available: the Waite-Smith deck and the Marseille deck. And the Waite-Smith deck has these scenes, whereas the Marseille deck is just the symbols of the card. This would have 7 coins on it in the Marseille deck, with no sort of scene or humans in it, right? Like a suit of playing cards. So this is more intuitive and allows you to project meaning onto it. So in this way, it's a little bit easier. And I continue to work with the Waite-Smith deck because, as you can see, as I sort of pointed out, there are many cards in this deck which show you how it is based on certain Kabbalistic principles and how you can use these principles to find deeper meanings and do certain kinds of spiritual work. And because that structure is baked into the images of this deck, I continue to work with this deck. Now, I don't use it all the time. Sometimes, for example, during the summer, I like to spend some time out on Fire Island in the gay community. And one of the things I do is I take with me a deck called the Tarot of the Divine Masculine, which shows male archetypes from the hypermasculine to the very feminine, to sort of show the full range of expression that is available to men. Most men are actually closed down to this full spectrum. And this is a way of exploring the ways that we express and relate to different areas of masculinity. And I love this deck because, as you may notice just from how many people are on this call, the people in the tarot world are overwhelmingly women. You go to a tarot conference and 90% of the people who are there are women. And there are many decks that are about the divine feminine. One of the best decks is Rachel Pollack's Shining Tribe deck. A new version of it has just come out. I don't love the artwork, but it's a genius deck. And her book that goes with it is mind-blowing. So I sometimes work with it because I feel like it has deep wisdom, even if, and of course, I also, have a belief that we have the masculine and the feminine within us. And it's a way for me to access and have a relationship with my inner feminine. It's just that for me, it's very rare in tarot that you get the masculine archetypes treated in the way that you do with that other deck. And so that's one reason I take it with me to Fire Island. I have more than 30 decks. Some of them I collect just because they're Kabbalistic in one way or another. Some of them I collect because I love the artwork. There's the deck that was designed by Salvador Dali, for example. Or there was a deck that was designed by the Mexican director of The Shape of Water and Pan's Labyrinth. I'm forgetting his name for a moment, but a great director, visual thinker, and the images on this deck are mind-blowing. So that's sort of my answer to why I work with the Waite-Smith deck. Guillermo del Toro, thank you. Exactly. So are people choosing cards and doing their writing? Because I'm willing to hang for a bit and then talk about it if you have something that you want to ask or share.
I pulled a very obvious one for me. Unsurprising.
And
the 10 of Wands.
So you've taken on too much, haven't you? You know, so, you know, when you look at the 10 of Wands, you have so many ideas and you want to get them all done. And it's actually, you know, become a burden because you haven't prioritized, right?
Yes.
So it's asking you, can you put some of this down and prioritize so that you're not overwhelmed?
And look where you're going.
Look where you're going.
I can't. Just kidding.
Oh, I get it. But, you know, this is one of the reasons why I say, think about stories that are connected to the images. Because one of the stories that comes up for me with the 10 of Wands is the sacrifice of Isaac. Right? Because he had to carry the wood up the mountain before he was going to be laid on the altar and sacrificed by his father. And so, you know, a question that might come up for you is, where are you sacrificing yourself in a way that is abusive? Right? Are you taking on all of this out of a sense of sacrifice that isn't necessarily healthy? You know, it's a hard question. But, you know, as I say, I look at the images and I look for their connection to sacred story, and if that's a doorway into possible meaning. Alicia, you'll pull the 5 of Swords. Do you want to talk about it?
I think she's muted.
Rachel has raised her hand, so you want to unmute and talk about yours? Let's see, who can we, I can't see everybody, so I can't unmute people, but I'm asking Rachel to unmute right now. There you go. Okay.
I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Amazing. So I have no tarot experience. So this is my first time actually pulling a card, and I pulled the 10 of Cups.
So, and what do you come away with looking at that?
So looking at this, I've been in the midst of, for the last 3 months, I've been quite ill, and I'm just finally coming out of being sick. I have a husband and 2 children, a boy and a girl, just like in this photo. And seeing the rainbow and the cups with their openings, I feel like it's a sense of hope, like a sense of something, like the light is finally coming, the goodness is finally coming, like I'm finally seeing the rainbow on the other side of the storm.
Beautiful. And that is, you know, and then of course, once again, you know, that is connected to the biblical story. You know, the rainbow is what the divine shows Noah after the flood. It's the promise that, okay, you came through the storm, things are going to be okay now. And so that is your personal meaning for this card for the day. And that is one of the traditional meanings of this card. I have some other meanings for it, but, you know, we'll leave those out because I think that's exactly the right meaning for you today. I see that Victoria has her hand up. So if you want to unmute, if you can.
Thank you.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, can you hear me maybe?
Yes.
Okay, great. I have a quick question, not about the card that I pulled, but related to the Cassandra card concept that you said. So I have actually had the biblical character Ezekiel has been like following me around, and you actually mentioned him on the call today, which is why I thought of it. Like, I could tell you so many stories in the last like couple weeks where like that character has shown up for me.
Mm.
And I'm wondering if you ever kind of like you were saying the Cassandra concept is like a card follows you, but I'm wondering, do you ever kind of like do the reverse where like something else is following you and you can go to the cards to help you like piece it together, or kind of like, do you know what I'm saying?
Sometimes, I might say, like, for example, I might pull one of the cards that really, connects to Ezekiel, that has those 4 animals, winged animals on it. And then I'll do a spread, and I'll be asking, what is your message for me? Or I might do something called bibliomancy, which is I might simply pull down a Bible, go to the book of Ezekiel, open it at random, put my hand down without looking, and see what verse my finger lands on. And then that's the message that I need to hear.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sharon, I see you have your hand up. Can you unmute? On.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I pulled the Ace of Cups, and the question that I was thinking about today is moving to a new city. We've been in one spot for a really long time, and this looks to me like a very positive card. Like the hand is open, the water is flowing. It looks like the wind is with me. The bird, it all looks like a very good positive card.
Aces are always about new beginnings, and they're always positive. But remember, you can ask the cards for guidance. If you're asking, should I move? And you interpret it as yes, great. But remember, you have free will. This is one piece of input for you. There are other pieces of input, and you may decide to override what the card says. You have to really, it's just there for guidance and to help you see things that you might not be seeing otherwise. Okay, let's see. Eileen, do you have your hand up? I can't tell, but I know that Francesca has her hand up. So if you want to unmute, go right ahead.
Okay, Eileen does have her hand up, and then I'll go. I can go after her.
All right.
Hi, thank you both for this. This has been really interesting. I also pulled the Ace of Cups, same as Sharon. But I wasn't asking a specific question, but it really does remind me. I grew up Catholic, and there's so much some the symbols in this are very, very remind me of like the Holy, like it seems like the dove is the Holy Spirit.
Eucharist. It's this is communion.
So it's very much that, but instead of like blood in the cup, it's all water coming out. It feels like the hand of God coming out of this cloud. But I don't know what it means. I don't know how to interpret it. It takes me back to, going through 12 years of Catholic school.
So can you think of a psalm that this image brings to mind?
It has been a while.
So there's a phrase from Psalm 23.
My
cup runneth over. My cup overflows. It is a recognition of all the blessings in your life. And, when this card comes up, it's often a moment. It says, take a moment to count all of your blessings and to really recognize and express gratitude for the flow that has come, the flow of benevolent generosity that is run through your life.
Oh.
How can you participate with that flow?
That's really nice
card.
Yeah, it's really,
Always love it.
well, thank you.
You're welcome. Francesca? Can you unmute? You are still muted.
All right, there we
There you
go.
go.
Thank you, Elise. And thank you both for this. This has been really enlightening. So very, very funny. I'm packing and I thought all of my decks were packed. And then I remembered, wait, there might be one more. So I went and quickly grabbed it and I shuffled really quickly and I pulled a card and then I said, wait, and it was the Two of Swords. I said, wait, I didn't ask a question. So I shuffled them all again and I pulled a card and it was the Two of Swords again. Okay. And my daughter's here and we both were like, what?
Yep.
So
I love that.
Two of Swords, Master Mark.
Yep, this is your Cassandra card for today. You know, you rejected it at first, thinking, oh no, I just did this without thinking. Now I have to sort of really do it, but it was really your card. So that's really great. So this is an interesting card, and this is one of those cards that I spend time with people on because there's a lot of stuff going on in this card. The figure is blindfolded, right? And they're holding these swords up over her heart. So that you can think of this as a way of, you know, someone who doesn't want to look at something and someone who is defending themselves from something and using rationality to cover the heart. But behind them is the open sea and the moon. So it could also, it's either someone who is defending themselves from their heart, or it could be that they're defending themselves from the world that's trying to sort of get through to them so that they can go inside and be with their intuitive self so that they can get past their intellectual thinking. You can go either way with this card, and it's more a question of where are you at the moment so that which way would feel right for you, right? Which is why I spend time probing with questions with clients.
Bravo. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I don't see any other hands. I mean, I guess Sharon, your hand is still up, but I think that's probably from before. Oh, there's Krista. I didn't see you before. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I was having trouble unmuting. As everyone else said, thank you so much. This has been so interesting. And I didn't ask a question either, but I did pull the Hermit. And Mark, I'm interested in how you find your card, because you said the Hermit is your personal card. And I mean, the Hermit makes sense to me as to why I would pull it right now, because I've had a lot going on. And but anyway, yeah, that was fascinating to me because I've never heard that we all have our own card.
Well, there are several systems you can use. I get the Hermit through the astrological system, which has a correspondence for each 10 degrees on a birth chart. So that's how that happened. And I can't explain that because I'm not an astrological expert and I didn't include the chart to show you all of those things. And it's really complicated. So, but if you're interested, you know, you can go to a book called Tarot Correspondences, which will show you how to do that. If you want to find another way, a much simpler way to come to your birth card, you take your month, the number of your month, let's say it's September, so it's 9. Let's say your birthday is 18. So you write 9 plus 1 plus 8, and then the year of your birth plus 1 plus 9 plus 7 plus 2, and you come to a number. And then you're going to reduce that number so let's say all those numbers add up to 54, right? And then you add those two numbers, and what you end up with is the number 9, which, if I'm not incorrect, actually happens to be the Hermit. So that's how you find a birth card. Now, if you come to a number that is 21 or lower, and then you can actually take, let's say your final number after doing all this addition, let's say your final number is 17. Well, that means you take card 17, and then also you add 1 and 7, and you take 8. And those are your two cards, 8 and 17. Okay. In this system, my birth cards are 11, which is Justice, and 2, the High Priestess. And I love that because I feel very connected to Justice, and I feel a little scared of the High Priestess. So the last couple of years, I've been trying to do more work with the High Priestess to connect with that energy within myself. So.
Thank you.
I think there's one more. Christy Johnson doesn't know how to raise her hand if she's still on the call. And then we'll disperse. But Christy, are you here? Yeah. All right. Ask to unmute. Did it work?
It's asking if my
Okay.
number is 5. So,
okay, there we go.
Okay, sorry about that.
a quick answer to somebody, to Angelique in the chat. If my number is 5, which card is that? So the birth cards are all from the major arcana. So that would be the 5th card, number 5, which is the Hierophant. Okay. Krista, go right ahead and ask.
Thank you. So I missed a little bit. I had seen my neighbor's dog in my front yard and dashed outside to take it to the neighbor's house and locked myself out. So I was knocking at my door trying to get my 13-year-old off his headphones, off Fortnite to let me back in. So I missed a bunch of stuff. I didn't know we were supposed to ask a question. So I just pulled a card and I got the 5 of Pentacles, which seems to be some people outside kind of maybe locked out. So I thought, I feel like I need to ask about this card.
In that picture.
I'm sorry?
There's no door in that picture.
There's no door. Yeah. So I thought maybe it might be a little important to ask more about this card.
Well, but the question to ask about the card is, what does it bring up for you? In what, like one of the questions you might ask yourself is, how, is there a place in my life where I feel locked out? And, since what we're looking at is 2 people, a beggar and a leper, who are locked out of what looks like a church, which is, of course, the place that they should be welcomed in, you might ask yourself, what is your relationship to your faith tradition? Do you feel that in some way you are not welcome in that tradition? Or that you have to leave some part of yourself out in the cold in order to be welcome in that tradition.
Wow. So interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank all of you. This was fun. I'm sorry if it was a little discombobulated.
No, that was awesome. Thanks, Mark. You know where to find Mark, and I'll figure out how to put this video somewhere if people need it. And we'll do this again. And Mark teaches also, as you guys probably noted. So on his site, he can sort of take you into the advanced practices. But maybe at some point we'll do a 3-card workshop.
I'd love to do that. That would be cool. Then we just focus on that. And as I say, if you aren't interested in any of the offerings on my site, but you do want to study, just shoot me an email and I'll add you to my list of when I let people know what courses are available, because things change over time.
You're the best. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everyone. Have a great
Yeah.
day.
Thanks, Elise. Take
All right.
care.
Bye.
Bye.